My name is Chava, Eva, or Eva, depending on where I happen to be. And I'm a Holocaust survivor.
Eva Ozarowski was born on December 12, 1930 in Warsaw, Poland. That makes her 93 years old today. Her father was a watchmaker and her mother was a modiste. And in January of 1934, when Eva was 3 years old, she moved to Lisbon, Portugal, where her father opened up a watchmaking store in one of the oldest sections of Lisbon. Outside the store, Eva recalls how thin the sidewalk was and how all the main floors on the street were stores and families lived above them. Eva and her parents lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in a lower middle-class neighborhood. In this apartment, Eva made her first friend, a little girl living across the hall from her named Milu. They didn't have any toys, so they improvised. Eva and Milu played with toys they made from old matchboxes and any other materials they could get their hands on. Eva recalls having a happy childhood, but she had a secret she swore to her parents that she would keep. She and her family were Jewish, and she wasn't allowed to tell anyone. In the mid-1930s, Jews in Europe were struggling with anti-Jewish legislation. The Nazis enacted the Nuremberg race laws, and one of the laws, known as the Reich Citizenship Law, declared that only Aryans were Reich citizens. This stripped Jews of their German citizenship and made them stateless in their own country. The foundation for the Holocaust was laid long before concentration camps. This building is in Vienna, and the large banner bears a quote from Hitler that reads, "Those of the same blood belong in the same Reich." Instances like this are the reason Eva's family insisted on keeping a low profile. So, no one in Lisbon ever knew she was Jewish. In her family's watchmaking store and on the streets, she spoke Portuguese. And if she had to, she could speak Polish. But in the privacy of her home, Eva spoke Yiddish. She didn't celebrate Shabbat, which is the Jewish day of rest. Shabbat happens each week from sunset on Friday to sunset on Saturday. During this time, observant Jews refrain from work activities, and this means closing down stores. But how could Eva's father close his store on a Saturday without raising suspicion? Eva missed out on this part of her Jewish identity, but there was an exception to celebrating Judaism. During the holidays, Eva's family would go to the local synagogue. Eva remembers getting dressed up, and when it was time to go, her father would peek through the blinds to ensure they would not draw attention from a crowd of people outside. When the coast was clear, they would walk to synagogue. One time, on the way to synagogue, Eva was walking in between her parents, hand in hand, swinging in between them, and 2 shopkeepers on the sidewalk asked them what Polish saint day it was. These shopkeepers didn't know anything about Eva or her family except that they were from Poland, and the shopkeepers assumed that because they were Poles, they must have been devout Catholics, and it must have been a saint day instead of a Jewish holiday. From a young age, Eva internalized that if people didn't know she was Jewish, then she wouldn't experience antisemitism. In 1936, when Eva started grade school, her teachers called her Eva, the Portuguese pronunciation of Eva, and just like that, Eva would now be Eva in her academic life. In school, Eva liked to play outside with friends and liked studying history like the Portuguese Inquisition. She joined the Portuguese Youth, which was an organization originally inspired by the Hitler Youth, and the purpose of this group was to build character and devotion to Portugal. Membership was mandatory between the ages of 7 and 14. On the left, you can see the symbol for the Portuguese Youth, and on the right is the pin that Eva still has today from her participation in this organization. In March of 1939, Eva and her family lost their Polish citizenship. This is a letter from the Polish consulate addressed to Eva's father stating that they had been away from Poland for too long and their citizenship is being revoked. Eva and her family were now considered stateless. 6 months later, in September 1939, Adolf Hitler's invasion of Poland drove Great Britain and France to declare war on Germany, marking the beginning of World War II. This was right before Eva's 9th birthday. Since Portugal was a fascist country under the rule of Antonio Salazar, the newspapers were heavily censored, and Eva couldn't get a detailed account of what was happening to Jews in Europe. A year later, in the fall of 1940, German authorities established a ghetto in Warsaw, Poland. Eva was aware that Jews were being segregated into certain areas, but she didn't know how bad it was until she started receiving postcards from her family trapped in the Warsaw Ghetto. Eva's great uncle sent her parents postcards begging for food and materials because Nazi Germany let limited supplies into the ghettos. Eva recalls buying chicken and melting fat with onions. She and her mom would pour the contents into a tin can, and they would send this along with sardines and other materials to their family in the ghetto. The Nazis would let in horse meat, but horse meat isn't kosher. However, rabbis in the ghettos would grant permission to observant Jews to eat the horse meat in order to save a human life. In Hebrew, pikuach nefesh is the principle that places saving someone's life over all other religious obligations, including keeping kosher. While Eva was receiving postcards from family and learning the truth about what was happening to European Jews, she also started secondary school. She was 10 years old and never spoke a word of being Jewish. Instead, she fully assimilated to a Catholic Portuguese lifestyle. She recalls one time in school, the cardinal came and talked to her and her classmates, and after he was done speaking, every student would go up to him, kiss his ring, and receive a blessing. Eva did not mind because she thinks every blessing is good, regardless of the faith it comes from. That same year, Eva's family put up a Christmas tree, and she joyfully hung all of her toys on the tree. In secondary school, she volunteered, learned French, enjoyed reading, and spending time with friends. But as the war intensified in the 1940s, Eva's family was getting increasingly nervous about the Nazi regime. This is why, when Eva's father received the opportunity to send her away to America, he did not hesitate. Eva was only in school for 1 year when her father attended a meeting with one of the many U.S. committees dedicated to assisting Jewish refugees. After considering what was happening in the ghettos, the fact that they were not citizens of any country, and the Nazis running rampant through Europe, Eva's dad did not see another option to keep her safe. Eva's 12th birthday came in December of 1942, and within a month, her mother taught her everything she needed to know about being on her own. She packed her violin in 2 suitcases, one filled with clothes and one filled with books. The following January, she was on a boat going to America. Eva boarded the SS Serpa Pinto in January 1943 out of a port in Lisbon, Portugal. This was a Portuguese ship that became the leading bearer of refugees across the Atlantic during World War II. It helped transport thousands of refugees out of Europe. There were citizens from Portugal, Poland, France, and many other European countries on this boat. There were also those that were stateless, like Eva. Eva recalls having a pleasant time on the boat, besides for the seasickness that she felt for the first 3 days of travel. The officers were kind to the refugees. Members on board passed the time by singing, playing games, dancing, and reading. And in order to keep kosher, Eva decided that she would be vegetarian. On January 25, 1943, after 3 weeks on the ship, Eva landed in Philadelphia, where she took the train to New York. Here, she would stay in temporary housing funded by the American committees assisting refugees. It was not long before the committee found her a Jewish foster family in St. Louis, Missouri. So Eva was placed on another train and was off to St. Louis, where she would spend the next 6 years of her life. Eva stayed with a family with 2 boys, Richard and Stanley, who she views as her real brothers to this day. A social worker would walk 12-year-old Eva to school a few blocks away from her foster family's home. The social worker told her, "In school, you're Eva. It's the American version of your name." And just like that, Eva became Eva. Eva learned how to speak English through school and picked it up very quickly. She was initially shy and didn't feel very confident when it came to speaking English, and she would frequently mispronounce words. But once Eva mastered the language in her later schooling years, she became an active voice in the classroom. She loved answering questions, and when she knew the answer, she would raise her hand. In her junior year of high school, she started looking into what universities she might be interested in. But her life would change once again and prove to her that college was not the right choice. Her parents were coming to America. It wasn't very easy, though. Many who sought a safe haven from persecution during the 1940s found it difficult to immigrate to the U.S. The U.S. had restrictive immigration quotas, and there was a complicated, demanding process for obtaining visas. The refugee crisis began in 1938. There was growing competition for a small number of visas that made immigration to the United States increasingly difficult. In June of 1939, there were 300,000 Germans on the waiting list trying to immigrate to America. A potential immigrant from Hungary applying in 1939 faced a nearly 40-year wait to immigrate to the United States. In order to help her parents come to the US, Eva went to the Southwestern Bell Telephone Company, where she was greeted by rows of telephones and phone books. She had received a letter from her father that a man by the name of Mr. Walkman could help sponsor her parents to immigrate to America. Mr. Walkman was a Swiss watchmaker that was friends with Eva's dad back in Lisbon and was now living in New York. He opened up a watch business in the States and was financially successful. Eva asked kindly if he could sponsor her parents, but he had already sponsored other people and he didn't want to get involved with the State Department. Instead, Mr. Walkman asked his lawyer for advice, and consequently, Walkman's lawyer ended up being a successful sponsor for Eva's parents to come. It had been 6 years. The last time Eva's parents saw her, she was 12 years old. Now Eva's an 18-year-old high school senior. She chooses not to go to college because she wants to be with her parents. Right after Eva graduates high school, her parents arrive in New York not speaking a word of English and travel to St. Louis. Eva recalls sitting in the living room of her foster home when she hears a knock at the door. When she opens the door and sees her two parents, Eva is overcome by an ineffable joy. They sit down on the couch, Eva in the middle, and they hug and don't let go. Eva and her parents are reunited in America, safe from Jewish persecution. Eva currently lives in Chicago, Illinois. She married and started a family and is currently a part of a strong Jewish community. She likes to bake, tell stories, and teach about the importance of combating antisemitism. Her favorite thing about Judaism is the joy of being together for the holidays and how all Jewish people feel like family.